Three, two, one, here we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian the Rain Man Lucas. Welcome to RAINMAN'S Take, observations on the world we live in. We're going to take a deeper dive into topics of interest to me, including politics, current events, history, popular culture, and social issues. You'll find the diversity of topics refreshing. In our clickbait, soundbite society, we rarely get the whole story. RAINMAN'S Take interviews interesting people as well as peeling back the onion on specific topics, all with the goal of getting people to think more deeply about a subject. My guest today, Brendan Kelly. Brendan is a veteran of almost 30 years in the medical device industry. And as interesting as that probably is, what I'm more interested to talk to him about today is some of the relationships that he's made over that 30-year career, and then what some of the really cool volunteer work that they're doing with those contacts that he's made. So why don't we do this, Brendan? Why don't you start us off by just kind of telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into what you've been doing.
Sure. So Brendan Kelly, thanks, Brian, for having me on. I've seen a couple of your episodes so far, and you do a great job. It's great to be here with you. Seriously, I'm excited for this.
I didn't pay for that, by the way.
I know that's true. He did not pay me for that. Yeah. So I'm based here in Baltimore, Brian. I've been here literally my entire life. I had one job early on in kind of with the English Lacrosse Union that took me over to Manchester for a year. Other than that, all the jobs that I've had have kind of been based out of Baltimore. And I have married 23 years to my wife, Tracy. We have 3 kids, one son who's just finishing up at Auburn, and then 2 daughters, one at Lehigh University. She'll be a junior next year playing lacrosse, and a senior high school girl, Bridget, who will go and play lacrosse at Elon University. So yeah, all that, that's kind of what we're up to, man. If we're not kind of working and helping out like volunteer stuff, we're with the kids, which is a blessing. So.
Well, I'll tell you, it sounds, that's a good thing that your kids are older now, because it sounds like you're doing quite a bit of traveling with this organization that we're going to talk about right now, that you've met through your contacts within the medical device industry. So why don't you go ahead and start there, kind of how'd you get involved with this group, and then we'll go from there as far as where you guys have been.
Yeah, that's great. And again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about these organizations, because they're near and dear to my heart. The great thing about this one is Operation Walk Maryland. So Operation Walk was an organization that was founded by a surgeon in Los Angeles, Brian, named Dr. Lawrence Doerr. And Dr. Doerr started Operation Walk, and the premise around that is there's a group of orthopedic surgeons in local chapters across the country, of which Operation Walk Maryland is one of those. And they go on mission trips to replace people's joints for free. So hip and knee replacements, no cost to the patients that they serve.
Wow.
And so literally 12 years ago in Maryland, a doctor by the name of Dr. Paul Kanuja, and his wife Maria, who is a nurse by trade as well, founded the Operation Walk Maryland chapter. So, I have told many people this, like I'm a believer, I'm a very faithful person. And, at that point in my life, Dr. Paul Kanuja and I was introduced to him through this, job change. And our company, Zimmer, at the time was donating and stepped up to the plate and kind of sponsored a donation to donate the implants and instruments needed to perform these surgeries for the patients. And so I got to meet Dr. Kanuja through that connection. And Tracy, my wife and I, we supported the Operation Walk Maryland organization financially. And I, got to go on a trip. And it was then that really kind of I saw and I use the word all the time, it's a miracle to the patients that they get to serve. Because some of them, honestly, Brian, they feel guilty. They're almost like, why me? Why did I get this life-changing procedure?
Right.
And so to see that work, but what's really amazing to me is the diversity of the team that Paul and Maria have put together, the cultural diversity of the Operation Walk, family, if you will, the diversity of where those people come from around the state, the diversity in their, literally like the makeup of the team, our nationalities and the like. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And I said it earlier, for you, the like-mindedness comes from everybody just simply kind of being on the same page to want to help the patients. And, these trips, we ship about 3 tons worth of equipment to these third world countries. And so the amount of teamwork that is needed to get the ORs up to speed and get them set up and all that, it's phenomenal. So I was just very blessed to have an opportunity to then, Paul asked me if I would join their board, and I was like, absolutely, I'm all in. And so I've been doing that for the last 3 years now, and it's been special. It's a great part of my life.
Before we go any further, can you go ahead and tell us what the website is if people want to, at the end of this, if they want to donate?
I appreciate that. It's www.operationwalkmd, the letters M as in Mary, D as in David.org.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And they can go there and they can figure out
they can
to contribute.
absolutely.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about the team of are they, well, probably not all surgeons, but the medical crew that's there. They come from all over the state of Maryland. Is that how that works?
They do. The core does. Then we have several that come from out of state. So we have doctors coming from Tennessee, from Alabama. We have anesthesiologists that are coming in from New York. And so, yes, the group kind of comes from, connections that Paul and Maria have made over the 12 years, plus the group itself kind of extends through their own network. And again, because the trips are so kind of life-changing, that your perspective seriously changes. There's the saying, first world problems. Well, we get to see the third world problems in a very intimate way. Yeah. And when you're operating in an operating theater without air conditioning, as an example, it's a unique environment. So that message that people carry when they come back from a trip, and sharing that, people want to come and join. So there are orthopedic surgeons, there are anesthesiologists, there are scrub techs, people at the bottom of the operating table facilitating surgeries. There's circulating nurses. There's occupational therapists, physical therapists. There are, general practitioners. It is a full-on team from preoperative to postoperative, and everything in between. So it's an amazing group.
And as you're talking about this, Brendan, having been in the military and having been deployed to areas where you got to bring everything with you, just that logistics. I'm just appreciating just a simple logistics train. I mean, what is that like? Are you involved at all with helping to organize all that, or do they have?
Absolutely.
They do. Okay.
Yeah,
tell me a little bit about that.
So, in essence, there are approximately 26 to 36 pallets of equipment that are walkers. There are tourniquet machines. Yeah. There are, and obviously, instruments and implants. There are the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that need to be sent over. So there's a group that, this group, if you're in, you're all in. So there's a group that meets throughout the year. We package stuff. There's a big part of what we do. Obviously, stuff needs to be sterilized. So a lot of the third world countries, they as you can imagine, kind of struggle with sterilization departments. So from a capacity end of things, we sterilize a significant amount of that stuff prior to going. That has to happen. Yeah. And then there's the shipping of it. As you know from the military, we have to ship stuff several weeks, if not a couple of months in advance, in order to assure that it's going to be there when we land. So there are teams that are deployed ahead of time to gather that stuff and
actually build the facilities.
Absolutely, and you nailed it, because when we go in there, like the process prior to picking a location, if you will, there will be a team that is deployed to a facility, to a country, and in that process, the OR, as you can imagine, is a big deal. And we request some things to be modified in certain areas, which not only benefits for a one-time trip for Operation Walk Maryland, but the legacy of that improvement carries forward. So it's not like a one-and-done kind of renovation. That's also part of the mission, Brian. So
the hospital stays afterwards. Wow.
Correct. Some of the stuff that we do is exactly that. It's the educational piece of kind of best practices that is brought to bear as well. And that helps, again, kind of achieve the mission of Operation Walk and Operation Walk Maryland specifically on this kind of the educational component to what we do. look, it's as you can imagine, the cultural shock for the people that see a group of 50 people immersing themselves in their space and stuff. And so there's this really very thoughtful self-awareness aspect to what we do, and making sure that we're very respectful to those people and their environment, and just simply coaching them and encouraging them, hey, you may be able to adopt this. And from the surgical side, there's absolutely this presence of education and helping residents and people like that. So it's an amazing event to kind of see it unfold.
And how long are you in one area for? Like, how long is this mission last?
Great question. It is literally 1 week. So you're there for 1 week, and in essence, it is a day and a half worth of getting the operating room up and running. There's a half a day of like preliminary screening.
Right.
Then there's another half morning of they'll do one surgery in each of the OR operating. And typically there's 4 operating rooms. Okay. So they'll do one procedure, make sure everything is working correctly, and then they'll hit the switch. And then it is literally like going gangbusters. They'll treat anywhere from 50 to 55 patients in 3 days, 3.5 days technically. So, and then you pack everything up and on our way. And again, now there are teams that were deployed prior to the trip. There will be teams deployed after to make sure that the rehab is going well and
that's
complications. So it is the thought behind this, and the improvements that have been made over the years, as you can imagine, like the after action reviews that are done on each trip. And they've really, it's kind of honed in a little bit, but you still deal with the third world challenges of, a brokenness in the middle of an operating procedure, and you deal with it, right? You just smile and figure it out, adapt.
All right. So a couple questions. First, how do you pick the location? And then second, how involved is like our State Department in terms of helping coordinate that? Because I imagine some of these places are not necessarily the safest places on earth.
Yeah. Yep. So some of the criteria, it's interesting, is that obviously the need is first and foremost. Okay. And those places come to us through network connections at Paul and Maria's level, at Operation Walk, the national level. So once the need is defined, then there has to be kind of this acceptance. The State Department interaction for us is kind of teed up. That's really not an issue for us. We vet out the locations that we go to in a very detailed way with regards to safety and travel advisories and the like.
Yeah.
But then on the country side of things, we like to have what we call an angel, frankly. And that angel is somebody who is going to be kind of the point person for their State Department. Has a very, maybe somewhat connected politically, but also somebody that can kind of help with the hospital side of things as well, in terms of just the logistics piece and connecting us with the right decision makers, with not only within the hospital, but also within the shipping and the logistics side of what we do. So, and that, then the third and the last one is like the acceptance really of the hospital to it. Really, I don't want to say adhere, but to adapt. If we make a suggestion to change something, they have to be willing to do that. Because we look, first and foremost, is patient safety. You can't go down there or can't go to these countries and put people in harm's way. So we have some criteria that have to be met with respect to patient safety and that kind of stuff.
And how many trips do you do a year?
We do 1 trip a year right now.
Okay.
And the goal, it's interesting you say the goal was in 2021 was to have 2 trips, but because of COVID, this year's trip got canceled. So it'll we're looking to see if we can kind of pull off multiple trips in maybe 2022 and beyond.
Yeah. Wow. And how long is that process of coming up with where you're going to go? Does that take the whole year to figure that out, or is it?
It's a several month process. It's 6 to 8 months. So we're already looking at 2022 and where we would go. Because this year's trip, we were going to go to a place called Amritsar in India. It's literally on the border of Pakistan and India. And we have some connections through our network And the need there is significant. The want of the country and this particular hospital to have Operation Walk Maryland come there is significant. We have everything kind of lined up. And so we're not going to cancel on them, if you will. We're just going to try to push that back and facilitate that in the next year. And but yeah, that's the process. It's just interesting to kind of see. Yeah. And I still sometimes can't believe that look, I'm a tiny piece of it, and I love it. It's just such a unique way to give back. It's so much more blessed to give than to receive.
Absolutely.
It's times 1,000. So good stuff.
I'm talking with Brendan Kelly, who sits on the board of Operation Walk Maryland. If we're talking about the actual Operation Walk program and all the work they're doing around the world with orthopedic implants and just helping people in these countries in ways that they probably never even dreamed that could happen. So if you're interested in getting involved, whether that's financial or otherwise, the website is www.operationwalkmd.org. That's operationwalkmd as in medical doctor.org. All right, so over the last 12 years, talk to me about some of the places you've been.
So I've gotten to go to Trinidad and Tobago, to Guyana, and unfortunately for me, the Morocco trip, it got bumped because of the Ebola outbreak. Trinidad and Tobago, it was remarkable. What's really interesting about Trinidad and Tobago, and I don't know if you know much about that part of the world, but Trinidad and Tobago is this tiny little island off the coast of Venezuela. The cultural makeup that is Chinese, Indian, and African American, Caribbean. Yeah. And oh my gosh, like the diversity of culture, and it was phenomenal. And again, just as you can imagine, some of the most friendliest people that you could ever want to meet. And Guyana was also, we went to Georgetown, Guyana. So again, another very impoverished country. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, they had made a huge discovery of oil off the coast of Venezuela. Okay. The hotel where we were was loaded with oilmen. And I mean, from all over the world. And there's the big kind of debate going on, geopolitical debate of where that oil kind of deposit was found. Is it Venezuela? It just was wild. And so we felt like we were in the middle of this because you could feel that kind of tension around Georgetown. And but again, we had an unbelievable trip. People like what I would consider kind of lay people, several like just people who are coming, they're non-medical volunteers, Brian. It's you and I, right? We just sign up, we want to go on a trip and participate. To see their transformation through these trips where they're very timid and they don't really know what to do. By the end, they're discharging patients and giving them their rehab protocols. And here's your little, pharmacy and your pill bags. And they're just so engulfed into helping people. But so that's where I've been. Operation Walk, Maryland has been to Peru. They've been to India several times, like I said, and then most recently Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, and we were really looking forward to going to Amritsar, but we'll do that next year. Yeah,
I hear you. It's funny, we talked about this in our kind of our pre-show talk about really the vast majority of Americans only hear about the third world country through the news, and generally speaking, it's negative, right? So, I'm a firm believer in kids should get out and see the world, because then you really appreciate and really understand just how amazing a concept of America is relative to whatever's out there. So I love that you can actually see a change within a week of people, and
And again, it's kind of like you bring that back to your kind of little ecosystem of who you interact with, and you have firsthand visibility of some of the complaints, and you try to just like, look, stop. Yeah. You do not have a bad day. You do not have a bad day. You have that kind of perspective. And look, that's hard for some people, and look, I respect everybody's opinion and the like, but sometimes I just don't have the time for it. I really,
I hear you.
based on what you get exposed to, and honestly, Brian, I get to see through Operation Walk Maryland how great diversity works.
Yeah.
I mean, just this team, and again, man, it's changed my perspective on life for sure. Yeah. And I try to help honestly bring that to my own like personal environments in a very tactful way, because it works. Yeah. It just does.
That's right. Melting pot. All right. So you mentioned something earlier in the conversation about the patients that, it's almost like they feel guilty that they were chosen to have it. Yeah. So talk to me about, how does somebody get selected? How does somebody get on that list? And then.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is the most difficult part of the trip. So as I said, you set up the OR. Prior to that team that gets deployed on one of these trips, they meet with the facility and they try to develop some clinical criteria. So that clinical criteria coupled with the facility's already in place kind of process for a person to have a joint replaced. Yeah. As an example, like in Trinidad and Tobago, they did 8 joint replacements in a year. Okay. And we do 53, 55 in 3 days. So there is a selection process. So we try to make sure that we're, again, respectful to that.
Yeah.
But there's a pool of about 100 to 120 patients. All right. That those patients get, and they actually get seen by a primary care physician that comes on the trip with us, and the orthopedic surgeon and a physician's assistant. So they individually screen that 120, 150 patient pool.
Right.
Then everybody gets into a little like auditorium, and you go patient by patient. And there is a yes and there's a no, because there's only a certain number of supply. And so that truly is a tough part of the trip. But
absolutely.
Certainly outweighed by the good that's done for the other patients that actually get the procedure. But that's a little bit of flavor on how the selection process is done. But, it's just, like I said, man, when you get to see the patients post-operatively, which in my 12-year career for medical device on the orthopedic side, I never got exposed to the post-operative patient, never. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to go up to the ward, the recuperating ward, after these surgeries, and frankly, to see people, Brian, walk out the door, a day or two after their surgeries, and they're just, glowing and so appreciative and thankful and all that. So the selection piece is as good, as hard as it is that day, it just, you kind of quickly forget about it, and you remember, quickly that you're really doing good
It's
good
just
stuff.
part of it has to happen.
It is, I know, man. Yeah.
Wow. The physicians that are currently there, like the ones that would do 8 of these in a year, how are they? Are they open to have you guys coming in, or is it more like you guys are stepping on our turf type of thing? What's that relationship like?
Great question. And again, that's part of a little bit of the criteria for Operation Walk to Go is they embrace it in a big way. And every experience, so I've been on 2 trips. They've gone on 12 total. I get to be part of the debriefs of all of those. I get to see the interaction post trip with the surgeons that are kind of left, that are the host surgeons, if you will. And they're open, arms wide open. Teach us, There was one of the doctors on our trip who he's a practicing physician for 25 years and was so just embraced this whole concept of life learning. And we certainly are going to learn from you guys. So it's been great. And our surgeons are so open to teaching, and just there's no time limit. There's no, hey, you just operated on 8 people. You've been on your feet literally for 13, 14 hours. You've probably walked, and I counted it's 7 to 8 miles. You walk in this little operating, and the doctors are just like, no, let's go. I'll show you. Let's walk through some instruments. Let me show you design rationales. I mean, the conversations are, you just, again, that's like life at work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. So.
Yeah. And now does Dr. Kanusha, does he go every year or? Yeah, he does.
Yes, he does. Yep.
So.
He's been every year. His wife, Maria, has been every year. As you know, in any organization, there are several people that kind of are the point persons to the logistics and doing all that stuff. And Operation Walk Maryland has several of those people that right now, the cool thing is the organization has kind of grown, and we're really trying to create kind of the succession plans, if you will, to make sure that the legacy and the lineage is deep, and the tribal knowledge is kind of disseminated to the troops, if you will.
Yeah.
And so that's really fun to kind of participate into, because the people around this chapter they just want that knowledge. They want to be, as valuable as they can be. So.
Yeah. Now, so just as a hypothetical, let's just say somebody drops you a humongous check. Mm-hmm. Would you be able to do more than one trip a year, or is that max out that one trip? I mean, are you guys a scalable entity where if you did somehow got that windfall, you'd be able to do this more often?
You know what? Another great question. For Operation Walk Maryland, the big check, there's a high likelihood that it would afford us the opportunity to do more than one trip a year. The reason why I say it's an interesting question, because Operation Walk, the organization, is trying to become a little bit more centralized, to kind of, create some cohesion amongst the chapters. So we're really not competing against each other for supplies, as an example. We could do a lot better maybe with our shipping rates if we all kind of, collaborated and have a co-op, if you will. So that one big check, although it would really help Operation Walk Maryland, locally, it may have a bigger impact kind of, at the higher level. Now, look, we have certain financial goals that we would love to, frankly, have our trips endowed, Brian. So that takes a significant amount of resources, as you can imagine. It's 50 people, 50 plane tickets, hotel rooms, the supplies that are needed. I mean, it's its own small business. I mean, those 50 joints are a significant amount of money. I mean, it's multi-million dollars of donations and all that. So, so we have our own kind of aspirations locally, and it's great that Paul, in particular, Dr. Kanusha, is a big part of the national organization as well. So it's good.
That was going to be my next question. That is, how many other chapters are there?
Yeah, I think to date there are 16.
16, okay.
16.
Okay. Is there any overlap where one group will go to the same country after you guys, or?
Yeah, that's a great, not to my knowledge, no, not from our experience, but there are Operation Walk Maryland teams that go to one location every year.
Oh, okay.
So we've kind of spread ourselves around a little bit, again, just based on our connections and stuff.
Yeah.
But there are organizations that go on one trip a year. And look, unfortunately, we've always said we want to bring this concept locally, but unfortunately, the way our government is set up from a healthcare perspective, the word free causes massive litigation, and the headaches around it just are literally, they're not conducive to do an Operation Walk Maryland trip. Now, with that said, there have been mission trips that have been accomplished, but not on the scale of what's done kind of internationally.
Yeah, no, that's impressive. It's like I said, this is fascinating, and especially like I mentioned, having been in the military, where you see that's that they can do that. That it's nice to see that a group.
I know, and it's so interesting for me because I had that part of the volunteer stuff that I do, and then I help out with this the wheelchair lacrosse program.
Yeah.
And again, the level of I don't know, the symbiotic nature of both of those things are so similar, man. But yet they're so different in kind of what they do. It's fantastic.
Love it. So again, this is Brendan Kelly, sits on the board of directors for Operation Walk Maryland. If you are interested in contributing or volunteering time, please go to www.operationwalkmd.org, and that'll answer any questions that you might have about the program. It's definitely an amazing program. you want to pivot right now and talk a little bit about the wheelchair lacrosse program, or?
Yeah, sure. If you want to, I would love to. Yeah, it's great.
So let's do it. So how long have you been doing that for?
Oh my gosh. So that's now probably in its 7th year. Yeah.
Really?
And I became introduced to that through my prior kind of job in the wheelchair assist. It's called rehab and assistive technology. These are high-end custom wheelchairs for wheelchair athletes. They're high-end power wheelchairs. I always use the Christopher Reeve example because he was a celebrity that kind of showcased the technology side of his injury. And God rest his soul, Christopher Reeves was able to literally through a sip and puff mechanism be very independent once he got into his wheel mobility, his power chair. So I was in that industry for almost 15 plus years. And so the gentleman I worked with, Tom Novotny, when we sold a small little manufacturing company that made pediatric wheelchairs and wheelchair seating, sold that to Sunrise Medical. After several years with Sunrise, both Tom and I kind of, we left in different ways. Tom went on to become the director, Brian, for the International Center for Spinal Cord Injury at the Kennedy Krieger Institute here in Baltimore. So Tom is the director. He's been the director now for, I don't know, probably 10 plus years. Yeah. They have an adaptive sports program there. And their lead therapist, it's Dr. Erin Michael now. Erin has her doctorate of physical therapy, which is a big damn deal. Erin Erin runs the adaptive sports program. She was talking to Tom about, hey, maybe we should try lacrosse. And next thing you know, Tom calls me. We have a clinic in the back gym, Brian, you'll know, of Johns Hopkins University before one of the Hopkins men's lacrosse games. And they put out some marketing around doing a wheelchair lacrosse clinic. And so that's really where it started, in the back gym there for our team here locally. There are really 2 guys in your backyard that started U.S. wheelchair lacrosse.
Really?
And I can't believe now I'm having a senior moment. I can't remember their 2 names, but regardless,
in San Diego.
Yeah. So we have a clinic. The next thing you know, we get some participants. All of a sudden now there's enough room or enough participants for a team. And here's the really cool thing, that happened. And again, Brian, it's all about kind of the networking and connectivity. There's a wheelchair lacrosse tournament in Ocean City, Maryland, which is not far from Baltimore. It's literally on the coast, about 2.5 hours away. There's a wheelchair lacrosse tournament there. The San Diego team is coming in, team from Milwaukee, team from Richmond, and the Baltimore team that I'm helping out with. And right then and there, they have the same able-bodied men's lacrosse tournament there. I forget it, Ocean City Classic. Well, who's playing in it? Petro and Gary Gator on the same team. It's when Petro kind of comes out of retirement, so to speak. Yeah. All right, so I called both of them, and I said, look, I know you guys are going to be in Ocean City. We are having this wheelchair lacrosse tournament. It would be phenomenal if you could just show your face in there. Yeah. Well, they came over and they were blown away, and they told their team, hey, you guys need to come over and check this out. So it got a ton of exposure from that point on, and that catapulted us into an annual. This was last year was our 5th year annual wheelchair lacrosse game, where the Maryland Thunder, which is the name of the Kennedy Krieger Institute wheelchair lacrosse team, plays the Johns Hopkins men's lacrosse team in wheelchairs. So the men's team, the Hopkins guys get in wheelchairs, and Brian, they get their butts kicked by our wheelchair lacrosse team. They're lucky to score that. I think last year they scored 2 goals, and it's just the footage we have is phenomenal. I'll send you that. I'll send you some YouTube footage of it.
Definitely.
Because our guys, like the wheelchair lacrosse guys, are so good. They literally coming off the national championship this past summer in 2019. So it was really cool. They all had their rings, and they were able to kind of interact with the Hopkins lacrosse guys. And and again, Brian, you want to talk about like building perspective for a student athlete, because these wheelchair lacrosse guys, they got no mercy, man. They're normal people, period. They just happen to have a physical challenge that they have 1,000% overcome, and they are out. They compete their butts off, man, and they again, they just go at it to the Hopkins guys. And what's really cool for me personally is when the Hopkins team scores a goal, it's like the game winner in overtime, man. They're rushing the court, and so it's just been phenomenal, man. It's again, it's a great group of really good friends now. I don't get to see them as often right now because of COVID. They would be up and running with their practice schedule, getting geared up for both the Ocean City tournament and the national championship. So
nice. Quick pause right now. You're definitely getting fired up because your camera's moving again. No, it was not bad. I'm gonna keep it because it was not bad.
All right, good. I'm gonna keep my arms down on my side.
I love it, dude. That's fucking awesome. All right, so we're gonna hop back in, and I'm just gonna give a quick snippet of my own experience and ask you if you're familiar with this group at all. So that's amazing, Brendan. Those wheelchairs, when you were talking about them, how high speed they are, we used to, my wife and I used to run in the triathlon to raise money for the Challenge Athletes Foundation. And that's a program, and I don't remember where it started, but I remember the first time I ran the triathlon was in 2002, so it's been a while. And I did 13 in a row, I think. But the money goes towards athletes who have had an accident where they're the spinal injury or whatever the case may be, amputees. And basically that athlete could write to the Challenge Athletes Foundation to get a grant to buy one of those machines because, I mean, they're high speed and super expensive, aren't they?
Yeah, yes, they are. And Brian, that is, I love to hear that because, it's interesting. We all have health insurance, right? Yeah. The health insurance for you and I will afford us kind of one piece of technology.
Yeah.
But if I really want to embrace kind of this new lifestyle, that piece of hand cycle, right? That's $7,000 to $10,000 potentially, if not more. I know when I was in that world, it was every bit of $7,000 to $10,000.
Yeah.
The high end wheelchairs that are used for wheelchair lacrosse, wheelchair rugby, wheelchair tennis, wheelchair basketball. Those are all $4,000 to $7,000 chairs. Some of them are carbon fiber, titanium wheels, and some people may say, well, why do they need? Why do you need all that? Well, you know why? Because I want to maximize my performance. That's kind of so. I love that organization exists to help these athletes reach their peak performance.
Yeah, the one thing, just going back on some of my experiences with the Challenge Athletes Foundation, is you'd be riding on the bike, 56 miles on the bike, and you'd come up against somebody or somebody would come up from behind you and the guy has a fake leg. It was great to see athletes still being able to do the things that they love. And I would assume that is a huge part of their emotional rehabilitation and the physical rehabilitation to still be able to do those things that they love. Because with people like us who are active all the time, losing that one day would be amazingly difficult.
You nailed it. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm kind of just, I love the fact that the guys not my team, the guys on the wheelchair lacrosse team, several of them are mentors in that regard to newly injured people. And whether they're athletes or not athletes, athletics in that realm has changed people's lives who weren't really active prior to injury, and see the quality of life and the mental aspect of it is exactly the same as it is for you and me. It's no different. That competitive edge, that competitive drive is exactly the same. So you nailed it. It's the mental aspect of the injury. And I'm just going by, being in and around that environment is real, and it's massive. And the sooner a mentor kind of gets in, the better.
Right. I would assume that same type of thing where the size of the pool of people who want to participate has probably gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So I would assume you're probably going to start having more and more teams down the road.
Potentially, yep. It's great this year because in wheelchair lacrosse, you are allowed 2 able-bodied participants.
Okay.
And it's only because of the fact that there wasn't a big enough pool of athletes that were involved in wheelchair lacrosse anyway. And yes, that pool has certainly gotten bigger. And look, the game that the Maryland Thunder plays against Johns Hopkins men's lacrosse team, when that gets out into the wheelchair lacrosse community, that inspires and encourages those other local teams to do exactly that. Go and create awareness around this fantastic sport. And so that's also very gratifying. And look, kudos to Dave Petramala, Billy Dwan, Bobby Benson, the athletic department at Johns Hopkins, says they have embraced this scrimmage, if you will.
Right.
And look, the student athletes are busy. It's in November typically. It's right around exam time. And again, whenever I get to see some of them locally, Brian, they're always like, oh, hey, Mr. Kelly, the wheelchair lacrosse game, we're doing that again, right? Yeah, don't worry, we're good. And,
very cool.
And it's great because, Hopkins has been very gracious with inviting that team to one game a year. And it's great. They get to interact in that outside of the game and come and support and be fans of lacrosse in general. And it's cool.
Nice. Probably a good time to mention this now that Brendan and Dave Petramala, who's the former head lacrosse coach at Johns Hopkins University, he won 2 national championships during his 20 years there. But Brendan and David are old friends and classmates from the 1989 lacrosse team at Johns Hopkins University. So he's talking in very familiar terms with all of that because he's been there, done it.
Yeah, well, look, for those of you out there, you also need to know that Brian Lucas and Brendan Kelly were also teammates in 1989 when Brian, Mr. Rainman, was a spry freshman at Johns Hopkins University, and honestly ended up forming a brotherhood because we played on the same midfield together. And for those of you who play lacrosse, you have your teammates, you have your attack mates, your midi mates, and your defense mates. And Brian and I shared that midi mate thing, and it was great, man. We had a good run. But Petro, first and foremost, I love him. Yeah. He's a brother, like all of us. He's a very, very dear friend, and I love him, and I'm wishing him all the best. And I know him. He's gonna be great.
Yeah, me too. That's really cool. And so you also had mentioned something else that you also wanted to talk about. Yeah, I tell you, Brendan, those 2 organizations, it's amazing the work that you're doing. And one more time, especially for the Operation Walk, that website is www.operationwalkmd.org if you're interested in learning ways that you might be able to become a part of that organization. They're doing some amazing work. And then obviously the wheelchair lacrosse, Brendan, is really cool, being able to combine 2 of your passions there, which is nice. Let's go ahead and switch gears one more time, and it's not really switching gears because it's the same type of thing. You're basically we're highlighting all of the things that you do on a voluntary basis that you're very passionate about, that are helping a lot of people, and I love that. So let's go ahead, and why don't you talk to me a little bit about the Troy Vance Foundation?
Yeah, so another just near and dear to my heart. Troy Vance was a best friend, Brian, all through high school. Troy played lacrosse and football at Loyola Blakefield here in Baltimore. Was captain his senior year of both the lacrosse and football team. Went on to University of Pennsylvania where he played lacrosse. We played against each other, had some scrimmages, and still, I would go visit him at Penn. He would come down and visit us at Johns Hopkins. And, after he graduated from the Wharton School of Business there at UPenn, he was back here in the Baltimore, D.C. area. And one night in June in 1993, he was struck and killed instantly by an impaired driver. He was walking home, trying to do the responsible thing with a girl who happened to be a girlfriend at the time. They were holding hands. The car hits Troy right out of Aaron's hands, and again, he was killed instantly. Not long after that, it was a very difficult time, as you can imagine, for several of us. We got together and said, look, why don't we do something in Troy's honor and memory? And so we raised some money to build a memorial fountain at Loyola Blakefield, which is still there today. And we did a great job in that. And it brought that group together in a great way in Troy's honoring his legacy. And so we ended up deciding to start this foundation 26 years ago, Brian. So I've done some research. The average lifespan on a private, not corporate, nonprofit entity in the U.S. is about 7 years. You just kind of run out of steam. So we just presented the 26th annual Troy Vance Memorial Scholarship to a young gentleman by the name of Zach Reed at Loyola. So the foundation was formed to do exactly that. We said, we're going to create a scholarship, a memorial scholarship in Troy's name that mirrors his character in both academics, athletics, and service to the community. Loyola's kind of tagline or saying is, be a man for others. And Troy was that. He was a gregarious personality. Brilliant in terms of his competency. He was so intellectually smart. And he loved life. He loved to have fun. And sometimes a little too much fun, maybe, for some. But at the end of the day, Troy's memory sticks with us forever. And we have this opportunity. And the great thing now, Brian, is that we have that scholarship endowed, which has allowed us to reach out to other charitable organizations in the Baltimore metro area, like Cristo Rey Jesuit School that helps inner city kids. A gentleman by the name of Van Brooks, Brian, who became a quadriplegic playing high school football at Loyola High School. Van started a foundation called SAFE. It's SAFE is the acronym. It's Safe Alternatives for Education in Baltimore City. Youth in our city for a place to come after real school and have mentorship and a safe place to study and do a whole host of other activities. So the Clara Marie Foundation around here has to deal with juvenile skin cancer. So we're reaching out in Troy's name, with the funds that we raise every year.
Oh, that's great.
And, it's another just very special group of people that have very, just want to give back to our community. So I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that one up.
That's three big ways that you're giving back, Brendan, and that is admirable to say the least. Are there? How am I going to ask this? Are there? Is that open to? Again, can anybody donate to that foundation as well, or?
Yeah, they can. I mean, it's right now in terms of our ability to we've just embraced kind of technology around the Troy Vance thing. This has been such a kind of unique family, Brian. It really is a family. I mean, 26 recipients. We have probably anywhere from 50% to 75% of those recipients back at our annual fundraising event at which lately been at the Mount Washington Tavern here in Baltimore, which I know you know about. And so that it's kind of been this grassroots community around the Troy Vance Foundation. So now, yes, anybody can donate. Anybody can. And the great thing too is we've taken kind of input from the folks that have supported us the last 26 years to say to them now, look, how can we help you with any other, do you have any issues or any charities that you think that we should be a part of and help support? And we do that. And that too is remarkable. And I have to mention, Brian, Mr. and Mrs. Vance. So Mike Vance, God rest his soul, just passed away the beginning right before kind of the holiday, Christmas time frame. And Terry Vance is still part of our foundation and what we do. And so they are so strong. They have another son, Nicholas, who is also strong. And almost every year, Brian, we ask them, is it okay for us to keep doing this? Because we don't want to cause any undue stress and mental strain to their life. And they have been so supportive, over the top supported in our activity and what we're doing. And so that too is another small part of just kind of giving back, for, again, as a parent, just that's got to be just tough to deal with. And we've brought some light in the last 26 years. They look forward to these events and just, keeping Troy's legacy alive. And it's now taking on its own kind of level of prestige, if you will, at Loyola Blakefield. They save the award now for the last award given in their annual awards ceremony, and we try to make it a big deal. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. All right, my friend.
Yeah, bye. Yeah, man.
That was some good stuff, man. Very
right.
impressive. Those three organizations.
Well,
you're doing some great stuff, Butch.
It's not. Look, it's not about me. It's about we. It really is. So I just, like I said earlier, man, I my faith, it just puts me in these positions, and I will do whatever I can do in my small way to just make them the best they can be, frankly.
Yeah.
I love it.
You got that. You've got that personality that brings a lot of, you can bring a lot of people together for a certain cause. So I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, it was great talking to you.
I know, man. This was great. Thank you. Yeah.
Again, thank you very much. This was Brendan Kelly. He is on the board of directors for Operation Walk Maryland. Last time, you can find them at walkmd.org. OperationWalkMD.org. Brendan, thank you very much for your time. I will close it out by saying, if you're in the military, the police or fire, or the first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for everything you do. Stay safe. We really appreciate the effort. And this is the Rain Man signing off. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, Observations on the World We Live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.